would throw these out, but we don't want to insult the rest of our garbage. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 worst video games of 2015. For this list, we'll be looking at the releases from 2015 that we immediately sold back to the store so we could put our money towards much better games. We'll also be looking at a handful of disappointing releases that didn't live up to their potential despite the hype they received before their release.
Greetings, friend. I am Abraham Lincoln.
We won't be including DLCs, remasters, or video game collections of previously released titles.
Because evil always finds a way.
Number 10, The Order, 1886.
I knew you would return, brother.
Come out of the shadows, damn you!
Talk about a disappointing way to start our list.
We deserve better.
This game had so much promise with its dark, alternate retelling of London history. And with 5 years of development, we were ready to take on those werewolves with some stylish-looking guns, until we actually played the game.
It's ideal for long-range shooting. I would be honored if you would test its efficacy.
It's short, like 6 hours at most, despite being padded with forced walking sections. And there's very little exploration in its gorgeous setting. The gameplay is your average cover shooter, you fight more people than those cool-looking creatures we talked about, the story leaves little to be desired thanks to a sequel-baiting ending, and with no extra features at all. There's zero reason to want to pick it up after one playthrough.
Finish what you have begun, and finish! Men were never meant to live this life.
Number 9. Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. When your title makes it clear of your game's blatant business intentions, you may as well have called it Animal Crossing Cash Grab. Despite its rather cute and charming aesthetic, it wears thin really quickly when you realize just how boring the game is. The main board game revolves entirely around luck, and the amiibo integration is so poorly tacked on that they pretty much act just as a button that you should be able to push. The extra minigames don't fare any better either, as they lack depth and don't have much staying power after 5 minutes or so. For shame, Nintendo, for shame. Number 8, Rugby World Cup 2015.
Nearly there, but held!
Meet HB Studios, the developer responsible for Rugby 15. At the time of doing this list, Rugby 15 was the worst rated game of all time for both the PS4 and Xbox One. Why is this important to know? Simple. Rugby World Cup 2015 is a botched attempt to fix the issues that Rugby 15 had. But this newest installment still has poor controls, no licensed stadiums, no online mode, bad graphics, you name a problem and this game's got it.
It's advantage Argentina.
It's like they ran it through a spell check and ignored those red squiggly lines. But hey, at least they ran the spell check this time, right?
The communication really working well at the line out. Gets that pass away.
Number 7, Attack on Titan, Humanity in Chains. On that day, humanity received a grim reminder. Not every Attack on Titan release is worth your time. The ability to fly around and battle titans should have been a huge adrenaline rush with a mix of absolute dread. Instead, we got an eShop release that failed to capture the heart-stopping moments of the anime. It certainly tried to, from letting players create their own squad, to kicking things off with the anime's iconic opening as soon as the game loads. But the combat and the world you're in feels limited compared to what Attack on Titan promises anyone who dares to put on that maneuvering gear. Number 6, Godzilla.
Begin your assault.
This is one of those games that die-hard fans would buy immediately, no questions asked. A PS4 exclusive starring the most well-known monsters in past and present generations? The ability to destroy cities, fight monsters, play against friends online, and hell, just see Godzilla on the PS4 and it all should have been a dream come true. Unfortunately, what should have been the biggest, most destructive gaming experience of the year fizzled out with outdated graphics and stilted gameplay. I mean, it's a slow-moving fighting game with no blocking. Bummer City. Number 5, Raven's Cry. Christopher Raven is on a quest for revenge, but maybe he should have been on a quest for a better game.
You're gonna regret this, Tyranno. Kill him!
This title was so poorly received that its developer, Reality Pump Studios, re-released it in an attempt to fix the issues.
I'm telling you, something's off about this whole deal.
Bugs, crashes, and other game-breaking things make the adventure practically unplayable. But the biggest issue may be the potential that the game had and the failure to execute.
You certainly have a way with people.
It had good ideas like pirate ship battles and building your notoriety through fear and killing of your opponents. But sadly, it was done so horribly that it made gamers feel like they were walking the plank.
Well, that went well.
I guess we should avoid San Juan for a while.
Number 4, Motorcycle Club. There's nothing better than the sound of a motorcycle being revved up, am I right? It creates that image of zipping down the street, wind in your hair, and the... What? We can't hear anything, not even the game's soundtrack. Well, welcome to Motorcycle Club, which is, at the time of doing this list, the 4th worst rated PS4 game of all time. I guess congratulations? There's something about racing motorcycles that doesn't translate well, but at least this one doesn't have a plop of a story. But instead, we get messy controls, ear-bleeding sound effects, and a switch mechanic that could be interesting if the game wasn't so bad. Number 3, Hatred. If we ask what games have been the most controversial in the industry, we're sure you'll come up with several titles that, while controversial, have received praise for their gameplay, story, and overall experience. This is not one of those games. Here, you play as a nameless killer who hates humanity and decides to wipe it out. Why, you may ask? Well, you must be a man-hating social justice warrior with no balls, so in your face, PC libtard.
My whole life is just cold, bitter hatred.
Anyway, in the end, the game was just monotonous and kinda ugly. So it seems that Hatred's devs tried so hard to cause a shitstorm that they forgot to make a good game in order to justify it.
And it's time for me to die.
Number 2, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. There was once a time when skateboarding video games were highly praised, and the second game in the Pro Skater series is still considered one of the greatest games of all time. Sadly, the franchise took a dive and tried anything, really anything, to get back on its feet, or back on its board. We assumed that that would be the end, but then Tony Hawk announced a new title that would apparently revive the franchise. This led to a game full of technical issues, dull environments that don't do the PS4 or Xbox One justice, and yawn-inducing missions that serve as a reminder why people put their boards away in the first place. Before we get to our worst game of the year, rather than go through our usual dishonorable mentions, we're instead going to be showcasing the biggest disappointments of the year. These are games that weren't the absolute worst. In fact, many of them were pretty good, but rather they're ones that had huge promise and didn't quite deliver.
Nice work, little wing buddy.
Hey, that's what I'm here for.
First up, Armicrog, a spiritual successor to Neverhood by the creators of Earthworm Jim. That alone was a reason to support it until you played it. Battlefield Hardline. What was once an honorable mention on our most anticipated list of 2015 has become a huge disappointment. It's not a flat-out disaster, but it really doesn't offer anything of value to the long-running franchise either. Batman Arkham Knight, PC Edition. Despite being one of the best games of the year on the consoles, the PC version suffered from all sorts of performance issues. Some of them were fixed months later, but now it looks like not all of them will be. The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes. Even if the main draw to the game is multiplayer, we still expect a Zelda title to have a good single-player mode when we can't exactly get 3 people in the office to play together. We just expect better to come out of Hyrule, or Hytopia. Star Wars Battlefront. Easily one of the most anticipated titles of the year, and while it looks and sounds spectacular, the shortage of maps and compelling game modes sadly does not make it the Star Wars game many fans of the series were looking for. And finally, Evolve. Being able to go up against user-controlled beasts with your friends should have been one of the most fun, unique experiences of the year, but instead it was really repetitive, and the heavy reliance on DLC killed off most of its community in less than a month. Now that those are out of the way, let's go on to number 1.
Ain't nobody else around, so let's go with that.
Number 1, Alone in the Dark, Illumination. To see one of the biggest influences in the survival horror genre be reduced to the worst thing to come out this year is enough to make anyone sick. The game is obviously unfinished. Either that, or the developers were too lazy to include voice acting, readable text, and, Hey, did that monster just belch at us as it died? And did that one just die in a soundless explosion? Well, beyond all that, the gameplay is the most cookie-cutter co-op shooter out there. Wait, co-op? The title says alone in the dark, right? Why is there co-op? More importantly, why is there light? It says dark. You couldn't even get the title right. Fail. Do you agree with our list?
Nope.
Which video game do you regret ever allowing into your collection? For more top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
Tommy, don't touch that thing. You don't know where it's been.